check it out. Hey YouTube, welcome to Check It Out Nunchuck Tutorials. Today I wanted to do something a little bit different from my normal videos. Uh, Normally I would go through a new technique and we just keep adding on to the techniques that I've done in the previous 12 videos. But today I wanted to kind of do a discussion video geared more towards the beginners and people that are interested in possibly picking up a pair of nunchucks and learning, but they're not quite sure how or where or other questions that may pop up that might influence how they learn, where they practice, things of that nature. So the first thing I want to talk about is what influences someone that wants to learn nunchucks. Today there are a lot of different ways to be influenced. Movies, videos, YouTube, other social media, martial arts schools, martial arts competitions. That's just to name some of the ways that you might have seen nunchucks and said, man, that's pretty cool. Maybe I want to do that. Maybe you're a martial arts student and you want to add nunchucks in to be able to do weapons competitions. That's one of the ways as well. Or you might, uh, be in a different type of martial art and you just want to add nunchucks into the what you already know. There's a lot of different reasons that you might be influenced to do martial arts and nunchucks. So with that being said, then what influences you to pick a certain style? And when I say a certain style, there are different styles with the nunchucks. I break it down into four different styles. And in my opinion, you have these four styles, and then there is some crossover sometimes between the styles. Most of the time, there is going to be crossover between all four styles. But one particular style will probably influence you more in more of one direction than another. So the first style and the style that everything came from is the traditional styles. Traditional styles came from the karate Okinawan styles, and if you ever really confined how those are performed, they're a lot different than what you see on most of the YouTube videos and most of the demonstrations out there. It's very traditional. It's very direct. It's very powerful. It's very much geared towards self-defense and combat, and it's a little bit different. Some of the older nunchuck practitioners that do traditional style actually consider all the passes and stuff that the modern nunchuck performers do a waste of time. Now, with that being said, the next style that I like is a combination of some traditional techniques mixed with a more modern approach, with some tighter movements, some spins around the body, and a few techniques added in for some flair. That is actually a style that I like to perform. That's the style that I like to teach, and the techniques that I do show are all geared toward that type of performance. And it opens up a lot of other things because it gives you a good solid base to work with. And then if you wanted to get into some of the other fancier stuff, then you already have a good foundation to work with. Now, the next one is considered exhibition, in my opinion. And you don't need to do a lot of the foundation stuff to perform these movements in this exhibition style nunchuck thing. However, no matter what style you pick, I always recommend starting at basics and then working up into that. Now, when I say exhibition, I'm talking about the flowery, pretty, spinning, thumb rolls, wrist rolls, flipping them up in the air, spinning around and catching them. It's some really cool looking stuff. It's not my style of nunchucks that I do, but I do think it's cool to look at, and I do appreciate it. And a lot of people are drawn to that, and they want to be able to do that. So that is one of the styles that you might want to consider, and you might be influenced by. The fourth one goes a little beyond that. The fourth one is in the martial arts world, and it is Extreme Nunchucks. And Extreme Nunchucks is part of the Extreme Karate thing. And the Extreme Karate world is going to be forms and katas in competition with uh, a lot of flips and acrobatics and things that take a long time to practice. And if that's what influenced you, then that is definitely a world to explore. Which leads me to my next thing: do you have to be a martial arts student or practice in a martial arts school to be able to do nunchucks? The answer to that question is no, you do not. I was 14 years old when I first started doing nunchucks. I was influenced basically by the Bruce Lee movies. I didn't have internet. I didn't have YouTube. I might have been able to find a book that explained any of it. I might have been able to find someone else out in the community that I could share from and learn from and expand from the things that I learned just from watching the movies. But I wasn't a part of the martial arts community at all for 5 or 6 years. I think it was 5 years after I first started using the nunchucks. With that being said, however, there are certain styles that I think you're going to be a lot better off being involved in the martial arts. The traditional is one example because that is just part of the traditional martial art. And the other one would be the extreme. The extreme martial arts, uh, it is part of the martial arts community and the martial arts world. So being a part of the school, and being part of that is, I think, going to be mandatory. So if that's what you're looking for, then of course, that would apply. So that brings us to the question of, where do I learn? What are our sources? Well, once you figure out what type of martial art or what type of style of nunchuck that you're interested in, then there are a lot of resources available today. And they could be a school. Uh, they could be videos like this, or these YouTube videos. They could be books. It could be movies. It could be anything. You can learn from almost any of these things and just practice with it. One thing that I recommend, though, is if you're going to use YouTube, especially for uh, information or as a source, then I would try to look at two, three, four different videos, four different channels, because most techniques and most styles are going to be very similar, especially when they're more of the traditional type. Most of them should be taught basically the same, and there might be little variations here and there, but ultimately they were meant to be done a certain way, and that's the way that they're taught. And that's there's really not any way around that. If you see things that are different, that are way off from these three, four, five different things, their ideals are way different. If you want to be different, then yeah, check it out. Personally, I would stay away from them. Um, so being able to find a good source is important. Uh, where to practice would be the next thing that I have gotten questions about. Uh, if you don't have access to outside, can you practice inside, or do you have to be in a karate school to practice? You don't have to be in a karate school to practice. However, it does have its benefits. You have pretty big wide open space, and usually you have mirrors, which we'll get into in a second. Inside will work if you don't have outside space to work with, apartments, things like that, city environments. The only thing that I would recommend is to make sure that if you're going to practice inside, that you've got the space in front, in the sides, behind, and above you, so that when you're swinging them around inside, that you're not making contact with stuff. Uh, you will hit things inherently. You're going to hit, couches, coffee tables. You, you don't want to hit lamps, chandeliers, overhead lights, things like that. Uh, Even I doing them inside once in a while now, and I'm used to the distance, and I'll still bump things inside. Uh, what I do also recommend if you're going to go inside is to possibly use a pair of foam nunchucks, I'm not a big fan of foam nunchucks, and I'll discuss that in a future video. But when you're doing things inside, and you don't want to like smash things with a hard pair of nunchucks, then it may be the best option that you have for that. Uh, my favorite way to practice is outside, and outside is a great way to learn. If you saw my first videos, I was showing and teaching techniques inside my house, and that was because I lived in the Midwest, and at that time, if I would have tried to go outside, I would have been knee deep in snow. So it really wasn't feasible to do that. But if you can and have the opportunity to practice outside, you have wide open spaces, you have a lot of room. It's a really great atmosphere to practice. If you have a front yard or a backyard, that's absolutely perfect. I would recommend though staying out of public places, parks or things like that. The reason why is, not so much because of legalities or anything like that. It's just that when you're out in public and you're practicing these things, you're probably going to get some attention. And attention isn't always a bad thing, but some of the attention that you get might not be in the positive variety. So unless you don't have any other option, I would probably stay out of the public view. And unless you like that, if that's your personality and you like the attention, that's all great. Just be prepared for the downside of it, the possibilities that it might not, all be good attention. Uh, what I would also recommend at this point for beginners is to just understand that practice is going to be the key, no matter what you pick. All right, so find your style, find a source, find a type of instruction that you like that makes sense, that you can follow pretty easily, and be open-minded and use different sources, because when you use all those different sources and if they all line up, then it just makes everything uh, more validated uh, for your practice. So find a good source, whatever it may be. I recommend also that uh, when we talk about practice, that it's more than 5 minutes a day or whatever. Uh, to get good at nunchucks, there is no magic pill that you can take. The nunchuck gods are not going to drop or sprinkle the ability to do it on you, and you're just automatically going to be able to spin them around. It doesn't work like that. It's going to take work. It's going to take practice. It's going to take time, and it's probably going to take some lumps. Okay, so as a beginner, you can use the foam nunchucks if you want. I'm going to talk about that again in another video when I talk about the different kinds of nunchucks. But uh, when you use them and with the type of movements they are, and being new and getting used to the movements, getting hit is going to happen. There's just no way around that. So you're probably going to take some stings on the elbows, the legs, maybe the back of the head, the back of the arms. Uh, but if you uh, find a good source that can show you how to do the techniques correctly, then you can probably limit that down quite a bit. If you just pick up a pair of nunchucks and you try to imitate things without having any kind of source to help guide you through it, the chances of you getting hit go up quite a bit. So uh, keep that in mind when you're practicing. I would like to probably leave this video on a couple of notes. The first one would be, if you have access to be able to practice in front of a mirror or anything that reflects like a mirror, I think the benefits for that are outstanding. When I first started learning when I was 14, I spent one whole summer bored out of them at mine. I made a pair of homemade nunchucks, and I stood out in our front yard. And our house in Florida at the time had a big window in the front that reflected really well, and I practiced for hours in front of that window, watching my reflection. Being able to see your reflection and seeing your techniques really help a lot in the way that you're going to be able to perform. If you like the way it looks, when you're watching yourself practice, more than likely anybody that watches it is going to like the way that it looks. Now, today technology is a little bit better, and everybody has smartphones and things. So you could probably set up a smartphone, and video yourself pretty much practicing, and then you can go back and critique it, and and see where you might have to work, and see how your techniques are working, see how they're flowing, and things of that nature. The last thing I think that I'd like to say on this video is try to avoid, and for me, this is one of the biggest mistakes that people can make from the very beginning. Try avoid picking advanced techniques just because they look cool in the beginning, and that's what you want to try from the very beginning. Uh, my whole video series is designed from very simple, basic techniques, and then they build upon each other, and they just keep going, and they create building blocks to work off of. One works off the next, and eventually you can integrate them, change them up. But they all work toward more advanced techniques as time goes on. If you pick up a pair of nunchucks because you saw somebody doing wrist rolls, and and you wanted to start from there without starting with a single spin, or without even once practicing a figure eight or anything like that, you could do it, but you're going to be at a disadvantage. And I think your techniques and your practice is going to look more one dimensional. Whereas when you can do a lot of different techniques and work them all together, then it looks a lot more multidimensional. It looks a lot smoother, a lot cleaner, and the overall performance is going to look, a lot better. If you want to do advanced techniques from the beginning, and that's all you ever want to do, you pick it up and you say, I just want to be able to do this or that or this or that, and you're never going to do anything else. I guess really there's no problem with skipping everything else. But if you want to be a true nunchuck uh, practitioner, then it all starts with the basics and it goes from there. I know the basics get boring. They're not the funnest thing to do sometimes. Some of them will cause some pain when you get hit. But if you neglect the basics, then you're not doing yourself any service when you're practicing these. So practice, practice, practice. Like I said before, start with the basics, work your way up uh, into whatever style it is you want to do. The cool thing about nunchucks is that you can evolve. You could start out practicing, a more traditional type thing. You could start practicing a style like I do, and then you could evolve it into adding techniques that have a lot more pizzazz, a lot more show to them, and then mix them all together. I'm kind of in the process right now of, learning double nunchucks, which I've never really given any credence to. But I've seen some things that I think are pretty cool. And to be honest with you, I've been doing these things for a very long time, and I find that very challenging. So uh, you probably won't see me doing those on video, but it is something that uh, I am branching out into now after all these years. So there's a lot of things that you can do. There's a lot of directions you go, and I will leave the video with just by saying, have fun with it, be open-minded, soak in everything you can see. Uh, you'll figure out what works and what doesn't for you. No matter what you pick, no matter what source you use, be safe with what you're doing, and we will see you in the next one. Check it out.